Welcome to Lift 2 of Vampire, and yes, it's dark. Anyone following on for the last video in the station, we have been down before in the daylight, but we want to see this at night. We're going to get to walk through the tunnel at night, we're going to get to see the lift hill at night, and here it is. Please drop us a like. So we ask, drop us a like, and we hope you enjoy this little trip to Vampire. Now we'll be treated this time because Martin the engineer is down here and he found a piece of Arrow's original Arrow piece, and he's going to tell us exactly where it come from. Look at this. This is the Vampire Lift Hill 2.
So a couple of things about the Vampire. Obviously, I don't know where you've come from. Have you come from John?
Yeah.
Okay, so he knows a lot more than me, and you know a lot more than me as well, even though I've worked here for 27.5 years. So a couple of things, what you may not know. Vampire, quite an easy ride to look after. In the morning, we do our walk around, we check the ride is safe to run, then we'll do our servicing of everything that needed from the day before, then we'll circulate the trains 3 or 4 times, then we'll do our block test, make sure the trains are keeping the distance apart from each other, and then we'll run them again in automatic mode, and then we'll hand it over. And that's when we get to ride the ride if we need to. Once we've gone that far, we cannot ride it before the block test is completed. We have to do that every single day. Block test is done every single day. Even though we don't turn the supply off to the ride, we will still do a block test every single day. And that is from the manufacturer. That is a compulsory act. And then after that is done each day, you can then ride it. Simple things on the bottom there. If you can just about see, there's 2 red lights. They're the lasers. There's some in the trim station as well, and they will check the wheels on the bottom. So the train will come in. There's some sensors at the high level there. It sees a brake feed, so it's expected to see a wheel, and that is counted every single time the train circles the track, and it is counted again in the station as well. Because the wheels are only relevant when you're going up the lifts at the bottom, the guide wheels. So that's a crucial piece of kit. Most people ignore them. What's underneath they don't even see, and they don't even look. They're looking at everything else around the ride. So something different you may not have known. There's 2 lasers there, and there's 2 lasers in the trim station, and it will count the wheels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If it doesn't see all 12, we'll shut the ride down. And then we'll come over. Someone asked in the previous group, why is there a little drain with a yellow hose coming out of there? The main reason that is there is because originally the Vampire from the Arrow trains did not have sensors there to monitor. Since Vekoma put them in, we don't want them to flood. If they're underwater, they're not going to work properly and they could short out. And that little there is just a little pump sump, and it will pump the water away. Something as simple as that. Yes, sometimes you might come in the winter, or other times you see a little bit of water, but it's not enough to bring the water level above the lasers, so they will always be working correctly. Safety, that's what it's about. Water can be a problem. So just so as well, the track is all aerodynamics. But this winter, because like people like yourselves will notice the difference, the brakes here are 3 black brakes, they are the Vekoma brakes. Aerodynamics obviously don't exist anymore, so we've bought new brakes. Vekoma make them. They're very similar to the use on their other coasters, and they're totally compatible with the Arrow design as well. And there's some in the trim station, so if you was in the station, you may have noticed the brakes were green. Just in case anyone was really clued up and watching Google-eyed and thinking, there's a difference. So that's, yes, they're not just painted black, they are made by Vekoma that run on the Arrow track. And someone else pointed out earlier, which I mentioned, why is there a stand over there with no receiver on, and there's a blank below where a brake would be? The original Arrow ride had 4 sets of brakes here, and they used to chatter. I know some of you aren't that old. They used to go as the train would come in. It never stopped it to a halt. The Vekoma brakes are closed, and it brings the train to a halt. Once it gets to a certain position, the sensor sees it, and then it will let the brakes open, the train will start to roll, and once it hits the next sensor, the train will start and it will engage and pick up. Vekoma deemed it not necessary at this point. It is the only one that is missing. The weight on the other trains were a lot higher. Yeah, the trains were a lot higher, and also they were shorter. The Vekoma trains are longer.
I wonder though, they were actually slightly longer.
So originally on the Arrow trains, you also have a switch track and a transfer track. The switch track is still there. If you've seen it before, people have seen it rotate. The transfer track was in the trim station, it would go side to side. You could stop a train on there, take it out of service, put it back over, and just carry on running with the next train. And if you wanted to, you could send it back on, you could pull it back over if it was in a good position. If you took it back for maintenance, then you would use the switch track and turn it back. Because the trains are longer for Vekoma, the transfer track is still there, but it's welded up. So if you ever get a chance to go through the trim station, you can see the two motors that are still up there. Again, part of the arrow.
On the one on the right hand side.
On the right hand side, the two blue motors at high level was used to move the transfer track. Over there, just brought the torch a second. So did one of you win the little sensor from the original aerodynamics control system? They were actually there. There's one that side and there's one the other side of the column, and they were just left there since 2000. We never took them away, and that's when I told you they've disappeared. Come down here, took them out last Thursday. So the real part of aerodynamics control system, there was nothing else left. Everything else was removed. So the way the brakes work, air receiver, the air comes in from the compressor in the shed over there. The compressor there only does the brakes at lift 2, and it will fill the receiver. There's a non-return valve there, the little brass part. So the receiver fills up, and as and when required, the control system will open the brake by releasing the air, and the spring tension of the leaf spring there will open the air away, disperse it, and the brake will then open, and the train can move. And that's the same for all three. The only other thing it does supply is up there there's an airbag, and that does the tension of the chain. We inflate the airbag that's underneath an arm. As you pull the chain tension up, the airbag inflates, and then as you come in, you can sometimes hear it bounce slightly, and that's because it's got to have tension. It can't be rigid, otherwise there's risk of it snapping. So it's got a bit of flex. That arm would move, and the airbag always under pressure. No non-return valve on that one. Doesn't need it. Tested in the morning is to prove blocks are clear behind. We have a train here. The train will stop on lift 1. Then we'll move from here to the top of lift 2. The other train will come here. You're allowed to have 2 trains at lift 2, one at the base, one on the lift itself, but never 2 on the same chain. And it never has happened. So that train would depart, go and stop in the trim, so we send the one from here, and it will then automatically stop on the top of lift 2. Then we'll move the one in the trim to the station, and then we will then start the lift again, and it will send and it will stop in the trims as well. And it will prove the stopping positions of each train. So every single morning a block test is done and completed in that manner. We're just making sure the blocks are clear and the train cannot catch up the train in front.
Right, you won't be able to see it so much, but we're on the metals. We can't go right to the edge, and we know it's dark. We know it's very, very dark, and as we turn around you'll see everyone else there. So that's interesting. I didn't actually know that the winch was also used for when the train got stuck in the tunnel, which has happened before, as he's quite honestly open about it, because people have seen it, but I didn't actually realise the winch could do that. But yeah, never stood on here before. This is new. There we go, and here is, we're staying a metre away from the edge, but there is Vampire. Never stood on here before. So impressive, really, really impressive. Now we did think the brakes were new. Actually, we did say in our last video that the brakes were new, and they actually been replaced on here as well. So it's interesting that they're Vekoma brakes. I mean, they're not obviously going to be arrow brakes, but it is interesting that the Vekoma brakes just sit directly onto the track, which is fascinating, really. But brilliant, absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of information there. It's funny because you do these behind the scenes tours, we've done them before and not actually had all, that information. We've had different information and seen different things, so to hear something different again is just amazing. It really makes it worth the money. There is the winch they're talking about, so that's retained from arrows, so that will not only pull the train here, you'll actually see it come through here. It's not uncommon for the train to stop here on a cold morning, but also will reach down to the tunnel in order to pull the train back over there. And as he said, there are anti-rollbacks on here. They did tell us last time that they're not active during the main season, they're only active during the closed season when they put the train back on, and naturally the trains do run slower. But there is the view of lift 2. It's only an hour or so ago we were flying up this. It is the tunnel at night, and people dream of, absolutely dream of coming in the Vampire at night. Well, here we are. Look at this. Now we've been here during the day, but we've never walked through here at night.
All clear now, everyone's done their pictures. So the fastest part of the ride obviously is the tunnel here, just before it hits the curve there. It loses its momentum, but the kick out there is the best part of the ride, I think, sitting at the front. Also, part of the track, if you notice, the track backbone is slightly different there to there. Different times and era of manufacturer. So original arrow, square, and then later arrow as well. Parts of the track were replaced and things like that in the past, way before my time. Slight modifications here with Vekoma. Because the free space envelope, when they changed from arrow to Vekoma, we had to make a big metal frame. That you may have seen it stored in the store track. Made a little copper tube with some netting over it, and that was pushed around the track by hand all the way round to make sure everything was clear. No impact risk. That is the total free space envelope. Where you're standing now, the arrow trains were slightly shorter, so the upstop, although everything was above, was good, but as you came down, the guide wheel on the Vekoma trains would have hit the concrete, and that's why it had to be removed here. So that's why you can see slightly, that was the original part behind, where the arrow train, it would have cleared it totally. With Vekoma, even on the lifts, we had to lower everything. All the guide rails were lowered. In the station, it was all lowered. So when you come around the ride, obviously, a lot of people thought, oh, why is it all muddy? We had to remove the mud because the free space envelope would have been breached. The next fastest part is when you come into the trim station, into the set of 4 brakes, and then it will stop you straight, and then you'll go onto the curve, ready to come back into the station.
Because you could definitely make that fun, because they didn't use that fun design.
It's weird to come through here with lights, like torches. It's just really, really weird.
They should really do that. Should put some lights and sound back in here. It'd be quite cool. Yeah, that's something to do for.
I prefer it dark actually when you're on Halloween. I want the whole,
The whole dark experience, yeah.
we
Look at it.
advertise ride the rides in the dark and then we illuminate them.
Yeah. So this is the newer track.
Yes,
Wow.
partly new. This is the newest.
So I did not know that the thick,
Still Arrow
the
track.
thick track is the old track from Arrow, and then these thinner ones are the new track, but still Arrow track. Did not know that.
And the
You definitely
tunnel
learn
was
something
then
new
slightly shorter with the arrow
every single time.
because the free.
That is a Vampire Lift 2, and indeed the tunnel walk in the dark, and there's definitely some new facts there. We've left it all in for you so you can see them and hear them if you can't see them, because I do appreciate it's dark, but I really hope you've enjoyed that. And again, we've broken these down because these just feel much more in depth than the normal tour. The normal tour threw up some great things we'd never seen before, and this has thrown up even more. It just goes to show you see something different every time.